The next one would be trying to trust intuition while fearing still being wrong. So you're constantly looking external for that validation. And I do think it's important that your intuition does show you validation when you're starting to develop gifts. But there comes a point where you're not going to get validation. You know, when you download a modality that no one's ever seen in their life and you're going, how is this legit? Right? There's no external validation because the validation is when it starts to work, right? And if you don't believe that it's going to work, then you're going to continue to prove yourself that you're wrong. So intuition is really essential when it comes to trusting your own intuition. It's being done without fear of being wrong. And I see that a lot too. And it can be the extreme opposite where you don't ever think you're wrong. Right? You always just like, there's the loop of consistently actually just repeating the same channel. I see that a lot in card readers. I don't know if a lot of you saw on my social media recently, but I actually had a card reader tell me some absurd things. Oh my gosh, the greatest content ever. Thank you so much for that, because that was fascinating. And it's such a lead into this is that she had cards that could mean something, but she repeated the same narrative in her channeling, and it's essentially her own life, and it's mirroring in her reality. And so whenever she had someone who didn't mirror that, someone who actually held an energetic of, I don't have a husband cheating on me, I don't have a family going to sue me, I don't have stalkers, I don't live in that reality. That doesn't exist in my reality. And I just sat there. I was like, oh my God, you're so inflicted with fear. And she was like, well, the cards don't lie. And it's like, well, neither does an entity. An entity who's controlling your aspects of your life are going to push that narrative so strongly in your life that it's going to prove that those doubts are correct. And so it's really important that you learn how to understand what interference is and intuition, because they are not the same thing. So trying to lead while fearing judgment. This is a really big one for leaders. This was something I had to walk through in fire. And it was about essentially standing in a space without feeling like, being okay ruffling feathers, being okay not being the people pleaser, being okay being the disruptor. And many of us that are millennials all are disruptors because we have our Pluto and Scorpio. And that fear of being judged is something that a lot of us have had to really work through, or you're still working through. And so it's really important that as we anchor in our truth, it's okay to be judged. It's okay for someone to have their opinion, and realize that not everyone's ready to hear your truth, because sometimes truth is not, it's a different frequency. And so it's like listening to a different tone system in your field that essentially you actually don't have the ability to listen to that truth. And so just realize it's not a you problem. It's like you're shooting out a frequency, and sometimes people are ready to hear that. And that's going to create judgment in their field. Your nervous system will always choose safety over growth. It is the natural way for the body to respond, because growth is uncomfortable. Our bodies are actually not designed to be uncomfortable. They're designed to stay safe. And sometimes that safety feels frustrating, right? Because we're working in this multidimensional aspects of ourselves where our body is programmed to stay safe and not growth, right? Or you could be like me, who growth is always consistent. And so expansion, I've identified certain things like expansion as, I used to identify expansion as dangerous, right? So growth was scary. And so my body would default back to a same system because that was what my default system was. So your nervous system will always choose safety over growth. And that is a really big one for a lot of people, is that most people don't want to move into that growth aspect of themselves. You don't rise into awareness. You fall to your capacity. So you always move back into that capacity space, even though you're consciously aware.